What you're about to watch is something that most real estate educators will not show you. So, this is the raw footage from our live retreat event where I got the opportunity to teach women pharmacists, dentists, physicians how to fire their family members as realtors. I shared with them why that particular conversation might be the most profitable one that they ever had. And within this session here, we're going to dive deep into questions that really separate those investor savvy realtors from those first time homebuyer realtors. Because if your realtor is asking about school districts or square footage when you're trying to build a rental portfolio, you are speaking to the wrong person. Okay. All right. So, in addition, I am walking through our members through the financing options that most doctors don't even know exist. We're talking about second home loans, which are 10% down loans. They can stack those 10 times. Bank statement loans for self employed physicians. You may not look good on paper. However, you're going to look really good with the bank when we discover these exact leverage points that have the banks running to close on your deals, even when most may want to walk away. You'll see real students wrestling through unique financing strategies like condo hotel financing, learning why speed is money, and discovering that the recommended lender from their realtor might actually be much better than the big box bank. If you've been wondering how to build a realtor and lender team that actually understands investor deals and doesn't waste your time, this is your playbook. Welcome to the Luxury Rental Doctor Show, and this is your host, Dr. Rachel Gainsborough.
Dr. Rachel Gainsborough!
Thank you. Goodness gracious. Today I anticipate we got a lot of work to do, believe it or not. You would think, the last day of school where they're like, okay, let's throw on a movie, let's hang out. That ain't it, my friends. I am sorry to inform you, that is not it. We are getting to work. We're getting to work. Before we dive into the 7-figure assets, I would love for you to turn to page 70. This is going to be a layup for our 7-figure assets. I remember when I first started looking for property for real estate investing back in 2018. I had been battling 2 years of analysis paralysis. I'd finally taken action, and I said, you know what? I'm ready to go. The first thing I decided to do is find a realtor. My homegirl was a realtor, my cousin's a realtor, my brother-in-law's a realtor. We're gonna find a realtor, and they are going to lay the roadmap for me for the most profitable properties in the markets that I'm interested in. Surprise, surprise, that was not the case. Realtors I worked with initially, they're getting a little bit more well-versed now, were not investor-based realtors. They were primarily first-time homeowner mindset type of realtors. And so for them, they were focused primarily on bedroom count, some of the top tier schools, how many kids do you have, how old are they? And they never made the connection really that this is an investor that I am working with. And it not only relates to realtors, when you're working with lenders, your lender needs to understand that I am working with an investor. When you're working with designers, property designers, I want them to understand that I am working with an investor, because there's a difference. If I'm designing a property for my own personal use, it's gonna be designed differently than for my guests. Utility matters for my guests, right? Eccentricity for my own personal use, that may be fine, but utility matters for my guests. So for my guests, I would need contractor grade furnishings. There's kids visiting the property that are gonna be jumping on the bed. We don't need the bed to be broken. There are gonna be individuals with specific weight limits that exceed perhaps, my family's weight limit, so I need to account for that. So that designer needs to understand that we're a hospitality business, hosting a variety and different kinds of people to make sure that the space is appropriate for our guests. Okay, so I want you to always question the vendors and the resources that you're working with, just to ensure that they understand what it is that you're working on. And we talked about tax strategists yesterday versus tax preparer, right? And even the tax strategists who are really good, you want to ensure that their real estate acumen is up to par as well. Okay, I have a tax strategist who helps I have an attorney who does cryptocurrency attorney type of work, right? So the crypto tax strategist is going to be different than a real estate tax strategist as well, right? They're in Silicon Valley, it's a whole different mindset. They know all the little inner workings and the loopholes. They've navigated, right? They have prevailed with IRS audits. So that's who I want to work with in the real estate realm. Don't go out there doing it on your own. Work with someone who knows what they're doing. That's what I do. That's not my expertise, the tax strategy. So I bring on the experts, okay? All right, without further ado, let's talk a little bit about the questions that you should be asking realtors that you encounter. Ashley is very much specific to this local area and Louisiana, as she mentioned a little bit earlier. Outside of this area in Louisiana, I recommend realtors that are well-versed with short-term and mid-term rental investing, okay? Okay, so I wanna preface this. I'm providing you some questions. I have even more questions that are in-depth inside of the portal for you, but I wanna provide you a few. Here's the warning though, I do not want you to bombard any realtor with all these questions all at once. We're gonna kind of pepper it and sprinkle it throughout our conversations with our realtors. We want to sound as natural as possible. We want to gather information. If the question has already been responded to, we're not going to, ask it again. So in your general conversation, I would love for you to get some of these questions answered, especially for a market that you are not the most familiar with, okay? The other thing I want to preference with you is that, believe it or not, non-responsive realtors are sometimes not a big deal. And let me explain this to you. Hear me out. If a realtor is not the most responsive, typically it means that they're busy, okay? So sometimes you may not get the attentiveness that you find inside of our community with some of the realtors that you're working with. Busy realtors are not gonna be at your beck and call, because they're closing deals, they're closing deals, they're closing deals. So be very judicious when you're reaching out to a realtor. Be prepared when you're reaching out to a realtor, and have your pre-approval letter ready when you're reaching out to a realtor, because the last thing you want is to be known as someone who does not take action, and that's just gonna really make that relationship difficult. I don't want your relationship with your realtor to be difficult. I want it to be easy. I want them to know, hey, whenever I send, Rachel a deal, she is closing on the deal, she's putting in an offer, she knows what she's talking about, versus I've sent Rachel 35 deals, she doesn't even have her pre-approval letter, she's like a window shopper. That's just not the vibe that you want to give off to a realtor. It just puts you in a bad position, especially if they're high quality realtors. You need high quality realtors working on your behalf, sending you deals in your email so that you can just pop up in the morning. Oh, I see these 3 deals, I'm interested in this one, let me put this one under contract, okay? So have your ducks in a row. Know your market, understand what it is that you're looking to accomplish before you reach out to a realtor if you want them to take you seriously, okay? Because you, of course, take your business seriously. You want everyone to take you seriously as well, okay? So does that make sense? All right, so without further ado, let's take a look at the questions to ask your realtor. How many houses did you sell last year? And more importantly, how many did you sell to investors? From there, what percentage of your investors buy another home from you? And are you familiar with local short-term and mid-term rental regulations? So this is one of the questions that Annette said when she got into Biloxi. She was using these same questions, and she was able to finally find that one realtor who was not only familiar with the regulations, he was sat on the city council as well, right? So that was a bonus. He was an investor. He sat on the, she was like, oh my gosh, he's checking all these boxes, which is amazing. Next up, what types of properties are most profitable here? And you want to understand the seasonalities. Is it a 3 season? Is it a 4 season? Is it a 2 season market? And that question relates primarily to short-term rental seasonality. And as far as what type of properties are most profitable here, what I want to hear from them is, oh, you know what? People love properties with a hot tub, or people love properties with a fenced-in yard, or people love properties on this particular street. These properties on the street is making more money than the neighborhood over, okay? So the realtors that are the most in tune have insights on those little tips and tricks in the marketplace. Next is, would you write up an off-market offer for a flat fee? So I love realtors that are investors and that are pretty creative themselves. And so if a market does not necessarily hit the MLS, we have negotiated just to pay them a flat fee, and they would write up an offer for us, okay? So not all realtors are willing to do that, and not all scenarios demand that. However, if that presents itself, you wanna know, what their standards are and who you're working with. Next up, what's your strategy to help my offer stand out? And that's important in a competitive environment. Now that we see the interest rates are going down, there will be more buyers, qualified and entering into the marketplace. And since real estate is cyclical, yesterday we're in a buyer's market, tomorrow we're in a seller's market. So we want to be very strategic on what are some of the tips. $25. $25. Busted. Yeah, so I want there to be conversations around just making sure that you can negotiate on my behalf. I want to hear what their strategies are, what are their tactics, how do they intend to negotiate on my behalf, okay? You want kind of that realtor to be an advocate for you, really. Not just someone who, throws an offer out there and they're not, following up and providing, some movement and some strategies to get that offer approved. All right, next up is some of the areas where a couple of our members have invested in, like beachfront condos and condotels and things like that. If you were to be purchasing a property in one of those areas, I added this question specifically for you. Can you explain condotels, warrantable and non-warrantable condos, and how those units are financed? Okay. That's an important question because that's going to be a make it or break it for our community members. And I've seen realtors selling condos and do not quite understand the nuances and do not quite understand what needs to happen for those properties to close, essentially, and move down to workflow of taking them to the closing table. What do I need to know to be a successful buyer? And can you provide 3 to 4 lenders you've closed with recently? So that was the question I was getting to. And so there's a whole lot more to it than this, but these are some of the questions, again, that have helped me to identify this is a realtor that knows what they're talking about. This is a realtor that has expertise in the marketplace. This is a realtor that I want to develop a long-term relationship with, that I can trust can support me on my portfolio growth and investing journey. And there's one more thing I wanted to add, guys. My brother-in-law was one of the first realtors that I fired because again, family, right? I can't emphasize enough, just because they're your family, and you love them and you're never gonna stop loving them, they're not your realtor. Do not trust your family to be your realtor. And thankfully, my husband actually fired him on my behalf. I was like, Marty's not sending me the deals. He was like, Marty, you're fired. Love you, bro. His favorite brother. And Marty was like, yeah, I wasn't really good at it anyway. I was like, oh my God. So that's what I'm telling you. I feel as though some people just do not take the realtor role seriously. I don't know why, I don't understand why, but you really want someone to take that role seriously because they're really impacting your financial future and your wealth building strategy, okay? So next up, let's talk a little bit about lenders, okay? So although these are bullet points on this particular sheet, I am a little bit more particular about the questions that I'm asking lenders, and I do a little bit more shopping, okay? So this is typically a table or a spreadsheet that I would leverage in order to ask these questions and collect the responses to compare apples to oranges. So at the bottom of page 70, I have the questions to ask your lenders. Okay, questions to ask your lenders. And again, this is a table format because I'm asking questions like what are the interest rates products you're offering, what's the minimum credit score, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you want to kind of jot that down to say, okay, this lender said this lender said this lender said that, and you can kind of compare and contrast. Does that kind of make sense, guys? Okay, all right, so it is bullets, but think of it more of a table. So the company name, et cetera, the markets they lend in, et cetera, who referred them to me, just to jog your memory to remind yourself. Now we're talking about the loan products. What do they offer? An initial loan? Do they offer refinance products? Do they offer both? From there, well, what type of property types they loan on? Some loan on all property types. Some loan on single family homes only, 5 units or lower. If it's a multi, like small multi, some loans on condos. So you want to be very sure what they're loaning on. From there, the percentage, the LTV, down payment requirements, points, interest, closing costs, you want to have that documented. Minimum credit score, you want to document whether or not they require you to have experience. And what I mean by that is experience as an investor or experience as a host. There are different loan products available for those who have experience as an investor that does, renovations, repairs. There are different loan products available to those who have experience as short-term rental hosts. From there, second home loan, their loan options. Do they offer second home loans? Do they offer jumbo loans? Do they offer investor-based loans? And do they take rental income potential into consideration? Or do they have products that would take rental income into consideration? Okay, so those are some of the questions. Again, not all lenders are created equal. Those questions actually highlight the different loan products that maybe one lender may have, right? And as far as investor loans, I would caution if you're looking for the lower down payment options, like the 10% down, be mindful of how you are wording your question. If you're not working with Jeff Chisholm or anyone on our team and you're working with a local lender, let them know you're looking for a second home loan. A second home loan. If you tell them an investor loan, they're automatically going to 20-25%. If you say second home loan, as opposed to investor loan, then you have an opportunity to take advantage of the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac 10% down. Okay, so I just wanted to go over real quick. Page 29, I wanted you to raise your hand and let me know if any of these funding products, if you have questions about any of them at all. I'm just going to run through them real quick. So the First Home Flex Plan, I call it my First Home Flex Plan. I typically would live in a fix and flip, just to flex the ability to use the lower down payment, whether it's a 3.5 down or a 5% down. So quite a few of our properties we lived in for a little bit, and then once the clock ran out on whatever the rules were, it could be a year or 2 years or 3 years, we hopped up and moved. And so where we live right now, my kids and my husband, they all protested and voted against me. And so there's a democracy in our household. So they're like, we're not moving anymore. So I remember them telling me that. So I didn't realize I kept moving them every time until they were like, we've had enough of you, woman. And so I love using, if you haven't purchased your first home yet, many of you have, I love using a first-time home buyer benefit, and a lot of times that's a lower percentage down. We've used the physician loans that covers physicians, dentists, pharmacists, a 0% down, no PMI. So those are products that I love, love, love for the first time home buyer type of package. So the first home flex plan, that's what I'm calling that. The second home, I mentioned that a little bit earlier, second home loan made by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. I like Freddie Mac's better. The reason I like Freddie Mac is because you don't have a distance requirement. So I have two homes, I want to say 5 minutes away from each other. However, one sits on a lake and one doesn't, and all of a sudden you now have what's considered a new market. But typically they have to be 50 miles away from one another. Yeah. For Fannie Mae. Freddie Mac has a little bit of wiggle room. All right, DSCR loan, debt service coverage ratio loan. That is a business purpose loan. Physicians loans, we mentioned those. Conventional loans, that's the typical loans that you would see out there in the wild. Jumbo loans are loans for higher priced properties, and jumbo loans are not created equal in all markets. So a jumbo in Georgia might be $600,000 or higher. It's considered a jumbo in Georgia, but in jumbo in California, it's 2 point whatever million dollars, because all of the small properties in California are like $1 million. So every state municipality has their own definition of what a jumbo loan means and what that number means. So with jumbo loans, I don't believe there are 10% down options. It's usually around 15 or 20% down. Last I checked, however, there are new products coming on the scene all the time. All right, bank statement loans are interesting. They're for individuals who are self-employed. So for example, on paper, I look really, really poor to the IRS. I have a lot of deductions, expenses. I take advantage of cost segregation studies, et cetera, et cetera. So it's weird because you want to look poor to the IRS, but you need to look rich for the lenders, right? So it's like, so every year my tax assessor says, are you rich this year or are you poor this year? I say, I'm buying, so I have to be rich this year, right? So it's a dance. All this to say, the bank statement loans are for those who look poor, who are self-employed. However, it's like, oh my gosh, you made negative $80,000 this year. That's what the IRS sees. But with the bank statement loans, they're looking at your bank statements. They're like, but dang, son, you're bringing in $100,000 a month, $200,000 a month. They're looking at your bank statements. Does that make sense? Whereas most lenders want your tax returns, right? But the bank statement, they see the deposits and they're like, okay, she could totally cover this. She's got a lot of other things going on. But at the end of the day, she can totally cover this. Make sense? Joint venture loans, there are those within our community and other communities that partner together to come up with like private money type of loan situations. There are those who can purchase for cash, right? I don't really recommend it just because leverage is how you'll go the furthest as possible. So instead of purchasing for cash, I would rather purchase 3 or 4 properties and get those up and running and get my money working for me. As opposed to just purchasing one property for cash. Using retirement accounts as down payments, or using retirement accounts if it's large enough as the entire funding stack. Again, I recommend using that strategically if you go that route. I have borrowed against my retirement account. I don't recommend liquidating it all the way, but again, for the sake of completion, I want to make sure it's here. Stocks, lease options. So there are those who've leveraged rent to own types of situations. That's yet another type of creative financing. Sometimes those are available. And I want to reemphasize for you that real estate is cyclical. I've said that before, but I don't think I've taken a pause to really explain what I mean by that. Real estate is cyclical. Sometimes it's a seller's market, sometimes it's a buyer's market. Sometimes we have a lot of individuals who are upside down on their loans, or for instance, the market value of the property is lower than what the market value is lower than what they actually owe on that property. So that's when a lot of the creative finance guys swoop in to do subject to, and those types of deals when it's lower. But if that is not the case, if the market value is way higher than what is owed, then they're going to put it on the MLS. They don't need seller financing. They don't need subject to. So just bear that in mind. But again, I want to ensure that you're understanding what's out there and what I have seen in transactions over the last 5 years. There's rehab financing. So if there is a property that you have purchased and you're saying, you know what, I actually want to make some capital improvements on this property, there are companies that are willing to loan you money to rehab or improve the property. I need you to be very mindful if you're going to bring a rehab into your life. It is a whole situation, so be very mindful. Who here has done a rehab? That's why I buy pretty houses, yes. Who's done a rehab recently?
Since the pandemic.
Okay, have you ended right on budget? There was no budget. What about you? Did you end right on budget?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Under budget. That's
Yeah.
because I was my own GM, general manager.
Gotcha. So you had a full-time job.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I bought everything
Yourself.
myself.
Okay. How many hours did you work on
I
this?
have no idea.
Yeah. So from a time perspective, time to revenue.
You still look tired.
January to November. He said you still look tired. Yeah. So if you're not gonna pay the money, you're gonna pay in time, right? Yeah. Oh my gosh. I lean heavily on my due diligence timeline for the inspection report. So you can go in and you look at lipstick. Like there's some properties you just see the pictures and you're like, there's no floors. There's like you can see the dirt. Like those types of properties that are like, they call them like zombie properties. So that's a no, right? That's an absolute no. I'm not even going there. However, it may look nice on the exterior, but the inspection tells a little bit more of the story. So for me, lipstick is carpet. I love removing carpet. Ceilings, popcorn ceilings. I love to flatten ceilings. Paint. The property is livable. It's in livable condition. It looks good. I say, okay, I can put my special touches on it. I'm good to go, right? That is lipstick. Like I'm gonna assess it and design it with my guests in mind. I'm all about that. But once you start telling me what, I'm taking down walls, those types of things, I get really concerned. I can even put on a roof. I'm okay with putting on a roof, depending on the budget, right? The team, they'll be done in 3 or 4 days. They do a really good job. So for me, lipstick is time is money, speed is money. If I can get it done within the next 30 days, I'm game. But if I'm pulling permits, I'm trying to put in a brand new swimming pool, if I'm excavating swimming, like big projects, for your first investment, that's a no. I highly recommend against it, unless, of course, there's always a caveat, right? Say you come from a family of, construction workers and you have all the machinery, the excavators, all the things, have at it and come over to my place and help me out too, right? But if you are a full-time W-2 1099 employee, you already have a job. You don't need a second or a third one, because that's a full-time job. And so part of our mastermind is whenever you get your inspection report, you bring it to class, and then we can look over things together to make sure that, okay, this is gonna take 14 days. If it's gonna take 6 months for those repairs in the inspection report, we're not doing that deal, okay? I'm not afraid of some repairs, but other repairs, not for your first, okay? It was a one-way elf. Oh my gosh, are we at time, friend?